Hello, welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. I'm your host, Mary Ann Dersch. As you know, I work with nonprofit leaders to master the art of influence so they can ask for and receive everything they want, need, and deserve without feeling rejected, ineffective, or pushy, because who wants to feel that way? And I'm with my new best friend, James Misner of the Kipos Group. And I'm very excited because we have not talked about this before. And we're going to talk about building like cohesive, strong, and productive fundraising teams, right? James, is that what we're going to be talking about?
I think so. But before we do that, I
Yeah,
am so excited to be here because I love people who like to do big things and have fun while they're doing it. So I think this is going to be a great show, Marianne.
me too. Okay, well, I like to do big things, and I think we're a fit. This is wonderful. All right, now before we get into the content, I always like to start with this question because it gives me a little window into somebody's world. Tell me now. I want you to think about this. Okay, tell me something you're really proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot. So let's something that's like not like sort of like, oh, my kids are like, yeah, everybody brags about their kids. Okay, like what's something that maybe you're really proud of that you don't share too much of?
Okay. So I think it's that this past year, 6 months ago, my wife and I moved our family to a farm. And we are mid career and we are trying to build a family farm while we raise three kids and both have like high stress professional jobs. And I love
Wow.
it. And I love digging in the dirt and planting flowers and trees and making things grow. And not a lot of people want to talk about, like my farmer ulterior personality. So I'll say I'm proud of the work of building a farm right now.
That I'm proud of. I think that's amazing just to say, hey, oh, hey, let's go start a farm. Why not? Why not? And what made you want to do this? Like, did you have dreams of digging in the dirt that weren't realized, or?
So yeah, there's two things. One, my grandma, who is like 90 plus years old, tells me when I was little, I always wanted to be a farmer. So that's one. And then two, during the pandemic, we had two of our three kids, and me and them planted over 600 perennial seeds in our backyard. We like dug the entire thing up. And by the end of that summer, people were stopping by asking if they could take family pictures in our backyard. And that started this whole
Wow.
family love of like being in the dirt. So half of the farm is a cut flower garden, and the other half is a fruit orchard. So yeah, we get to do that we learn to love together as a family.
That is amazing. And I bet you have flowers all over the house in the summer.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so your company, you said you over your career, you have facilitated raising hundreds of millions of dollars to support nonprofit organizations. And you are a trusted expert in the realm of fundraising strategy, staff, culture, and implementation. I love this because, one of the things that I've learned about you from is, really about the culture, right? Building the leadership and a strong fundraising culture. Before we get into it, I'd love for you to share just why you started this business, and what made you want to make the Epos Group and share your expertise with the world.
Yeah, so honestly, I think the nonprofit world is in a bit of upheaval right now.
Agree.
There's a leadership crisis everywhere you look in the nonprofit world. There is rampant burnout. We have seen a massive wave of tenured CEOs and executive directors leaving. Funding has stagnated or declined, and with inflation, if it's stagnated, it feels like you're down because everything costs more money. And oh, by the way, if you're getting any public funding for your direct service organization, chances are in 2025, it's not going to be an amazing picture for you.
Right.
Um, so I really feel for those people. And I especially feel for the small and mid-sized nonprofits. I don't always think that bigger is better in the nonprofit world. I think some of the most innovative ideas come out of some of the smaller organizations. But the reality is that only 2% of nonprofits in the US ever break 1 million in annual funding. And only 0.4% ever break 10 million in annual funding.
Wow.
And if the most innovative solutions to some of the world's biggest problems are in those small subscale nonprofits, I want to help them break free. I want to
Yeah.
change. We have a client right now, Marianne, that has developed one of the most innovative anti-trafficking systems in the world, and that are being applauded by all these institutions everywhere, but they're subscale in terms of their funding. I want to help groups like that double, triple, quadruple their revenue so they can grow something beautiful in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I did a workshop, and I just did a workshop yesterday morning, and I had a lot, which was weird because we're recording this day after Giving Tuesday, but it was okay because I had a lot of CEOs and founders in the room, okay, of smaller organizations. And they would say, "Oh, we're just a little nonprofit, really, really small nonprofit," as if it was a bad thing. Like, I don't go and say, "Oh, I have a really small business." I say, "Oh no, I run my own business." You know what I mean? Like, and but I think the nonprofit, we think, "Oh, I'm just this little nonprofit." Like, everybody's supposed to be the Red Cross or the United Way or something. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're not breaking a million, you're not anything. And I just like, I think that is part of the issue is instead of seeing themselves as, you know, lean or, I mean, like appropriate size for what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, we're just this little nonprofit. Like, you're not like, there's, you know what I mean? Like the for-profit world doesn't like that. I wouldn't use that same language to, oh, I'm just a little business owner.
No one would use that in the for-profit space.
Right.
We own our own businesses, Marianne.
Yeah.
Like, we're our own boss. We broke out of the 9 to 5 hustle. We pat ourselves on the back. The nonprofit space has a massive inferiority complex,
Yes.
massive compared to the
Yes.
profit space. They think that, and I used to be part of this. You probably did too. We think that we're the sloppy seconds compared to Microsoft and Apple and people, in financial services. But here's the flip side of that. Big business has not solved the world's most intractable problems. Big business has not found a way to monetize ending hunger. Big business has not found a way to monetize ending poverty around the world. Governments haven't been able to do it. So, to all of you out there who are quote unquote, oh, small nonprofit leaders, you're doing things that these big companies would never be able to. And I guarantee you, Marianne, you know exactly the person I'm talking about on the board or the CEO that comes in from big business, quote unquote, and joins the nonprofit world. Half the time, they can't even keep their head above water. And every time they tell you it's the hardest thing they ever did. I worked
Mm-hmm.
for a guy who helped to start Accenture, one of the biggest companies in the world. He joined a mid-sized nonprofit and said it was the hardest thing he ever did. Started one of the biggest companies in the world, and the nonprofit world nearly broke him.
Oh,
Because it's hard and it's not as easy as doing a business. If somebody could make money doing it, they would have done it decades ago.
right. Right. Yeah. Uh, yeah. And I always, one of the things that I think is even the nonprofit, like we're defined by what we're not, right? And it's like we're not profit made. Like even the definition itself, I think contributes because language is important. Like I'm a words person, right? How we talk about, how we think and talk about things, I believe, shapes our reality. What else can? And so like when we think, oh, I'm a nonprofit, we're already defined by what we aren't. Right. And I think that just contributes a lot to the overall self-esteem of the industry of the
That's right.
sector. Like, you
That's
know what I
right.
mean? By definition, we're a negative. And like because we don't, who cares? That's the least interesting thing about an organization is that they don't make a profit. And I love what you said about like we haven't found a way to monetize poverty, I mean, maybe you know
Well, people have found ways to monetize
monetize
poverty. They haven't found ways to monetize
monetize
fixing
the
poverty.
solution to it, right? All right. Well, what I really want to switch to and focus in on is teams and building team culture because I've never really actually dove into that in this podcast. And I work with teams inside organizations, mostly on um building their interpersonal skills and their relationships and allowing them to have more honest and productive conversations. Because that's kind of, sometimes I work with so many just nice people, and they all sit in the meeting and they go, yeah, that sounds great. And then they go and tell their coworker, I don't like that idea at all.
So you're dealing with Midwest nice out there, aren't you, Marianne?
Yeah. Everyone, we're just kind people and we want to be agreeable. And they see, conflict is bad. So really helping them navigate relationship building. And I just love doing that. So I would love to just hear your take on how do we create strong teams? And we can talk about fundraising teams specifically, or just organizational teams, outside of the fundraising. You know what I mean? Because if we're
Yeah.
working like the small to medium sized groups, they're probably not going to have a fundraising team, or they might. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's take everything we've talked about, these nonprofits, our community, our friends who are trying to solve the world's most intractable problems. The weight of that carried on one or two people's shoulders is immense. How do you distribute that? You build a team around it. Patrick Lencioni, in his book Five Dysfunctions of a Team, it opens when he said with a sentence that says it's not finance, it's not strategy, it's not technology that is the ultimate competitive advantage. It's teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so rare. Okay, so teamwork is really rare. Finding a great team that you can hitch your wagon to is a really hard thing to do. Okay, so let's start there. It's very rare. Let's add to Lencioni Jim Collins, okay? Because nonprofits live in a really chaotic and uncertain world. And Jim Collins says that in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, when you can't predict what's coming around the bend, the best strategy is to have a busload of people who can adapt and perform brilliantly no matter what happens next. Great vision without great people is irrelevant. Okay. And I believe that deeply. You said in the beginning, I've helped to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's true. But the only way I've ever figured out how to do it is to build a world-class team around me to do it. And I think that there are some core underlying principles that have to be in every single team if they're going to succeed. And I call them the 3 C's. Because as consultants, we need nice, simple frameworks for people
We
to
like things like that. Yes.
So the first C, I think, in building a world-class team is clarity. Okay. When I go into an organization, I am shocked at how confused people are about what their job is and what they're supposed to be doing every day. And I'm not talking about entry-level 23-year-olds. I'm talking about C-suite executives that don't know where they begin and somebody else ends and who has responsibility for what. People need to have clarity about what exactly is expected of them in their day-to-day job. Okay. Go ahead, Marianne.
No, keep going. I'm loving this.
Oh, yeah. They need to have clarity about that. What am I being measured on? What is the North Star here? What is the most important priority right now? If they don't have clarity on what that is, they are going to flounder over and over and over again. Brene Brown tells us that clarity is kind. And so we need to be kind to our organizations as leaders and bring clarity. In the fundraising space, that means how am I being measured every month? What types of meetings? How many meetings am I supposed to be having? When is the window for how they'll be measured? When does the data need to be put in the system so I can be, measured appropriately? If we don't have clarity inside of our organizations, we can't build teams because teams need a clear end zone, a direction to run the ball to. That's the first C.
All right, I want to pause there on your first C. Again, this workshop yesterday, this is so funny. One of the things that we talked about, because we were working on closing out 2024 and planning for 2025, is the need for certainty and control, which we don't have, right? And so, and I want to just be careful because some of the language that we use is, like chaos and it's always unexpected. That's just life. Okay. That's just living.
Mhm.
None of us has a magic ball, and there's no plan or formula that's going to make uncertainty and doubt disappear. So the more that we can just say, hey, no one knows what's coming, right? And that longing for certainty and control, especially in planning. um and one of the points that I was making is that sometimes it keeps our plans really small and safe, instead of like making some bold things, because like we don't want to fail, and we, but and I just want to say that, that the idea of like it's always chaotic, it's always uncertain, because that is just life, right? That, and the more that we just embrace that, and then okay, but what can I do, right? Where does my sovereignty lie? Well, that's in building the support system around me, so that when the unexpected comes, I'm ready, right? Like that for me is like, so good, because the people who have done this, they react to crisis much differently, right? Because like they have that support network. And the second thing I want to say real quickly is, again, yesterday we were talking about KPIs, key performance indicators, and how that can really help people to, first of all, like you're saying, clarify their role, but second is to like really celebrate, and maybe that's a C for you, their incremental wins. You know what I say, like celebrate, like, hey, like I have this clarity of what I'm supposed to do, and I can see now the success that I'm bringing. It doesn't feel like I'm just producing into a void, right? There's actually something coming back to me that fills my cup and keeps me excited to stay engaged and stay purposeful, because we don't have that. Like there's a Rumi quote that I use a lot. It's like, we give from the overflow, not the depths of the well. So like you and I see our role as well fillers, right? We're just here to fill people's well so they have the energy to connect. Okay, keep going.
Well, I'm going to camp out there because I love this. We know that nothing is static and change is the only constant. And one of the things that I try to preach to the people that I'm in front of is the difference between being responsible for something versus responsible to something. Okay, because in a chaotic world that's always changing, you're not responsible for that chaos. It's not your job to solve that.
Mhm.
Nonprofit leaders who might lose public funding in 2025, they're not responsible for that. They can't control it. What are they responsible to, though? You're responsible to show up with your best every single day. You're responsible to find the two or three things that you can either influence or control and
Mhm.
leverage those to bring about great change in the world.
That's
Um,
exactly right.
so I'm with you. Let's go to the second C. Let's talk about community. Okay.
Okay.
If you have clarity, that's great. But it's only one leg of this, stool of three C's, because you need community, and a healthy community fuels growth. If your community, if your team is healthy, they're going to be really very willing to work with leadership. They're going to help you determine the metrics that are going to best show off their progress in their work. The inverse of that is that an unhealthy community will resist anything that can be perceived as inspection. Okay. A healthy community will say, hey, come look at us and what we're doing together. And an unhealthy community will say, please do not ever look under the hood here. We don't want you to see.
Right.
And, healthy teams need community. They need each other, because community helps us feel confident. Community helps us feel strong. And in community, we can share our successes and our failures without fearing that our whole being is going to be vaporized by somebody else's opinion. Okay.
Right.
We can share across the team, which is the best practice. Hey, here's how I'm doing in my area and in my metrics that I'm going from. And community means that we celebrate when somebody is succeeding, and community means that we circle around them when maybe they're not succeeding as much and they need a little bit of extra help. because their area is either hard or they have a growth edge that they need to lean into. So
Right.
community is really important in building a healthy team. If you don't have community, you don't have team at all.
So I'm gonna share a story. Um, just personally, I do a big event every year. It's called the Donor Attraction Forum. And this year, this was the first year I got sponsors. I intentionally built community among the experts that were coming on and sharing in this event. Right. So there was about 8 different speakers, different nonprofit experts that were coming over 2 days, and for months and months of preparation. But I did have a couple of prep calls where everybody got to meet each other. They got to share their expertise, their hot takes, their and connect with each other. I did a lot of cross communication because I intentionally wanted to have a high level of investment in this event. Well, here's what happened. Between Thursday and Friday, I got the worst flu of my life, like the worst flu of my life. And I couldn't even function. And my event organizers were like, we'll reschedule. I'm like, no, my God, don't do that. Like, I can't even imagine like having to, I said, no, we're going to go. But there's 2 guys, my best friend, Jim's partner, Michael, and this Matt Hug, if you know nonprofit courses. Matt Hug he runs an organization called Nonprofit Courses. He's like, we'll host. I'm like, are you sure? They're like, yeah, it's fine. And because I had spent really time and attention building this team, I went down and they stepped in. Right. Like, and it was amazing. Like, but if I hadn't done that, I'm not sure they would feel comfortable. They didn't know each other. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and they just hung out all day, and we had the interview questions. They had a script because my event organizers are amazing. And I went down and they stepped in. That's community, right? And I always tell that story because I tell people this is what happens when you intentionally build community. When you can't be there, people will step up for you. People are invested in your success, in each other's success, right? Like that. I just didn't do it because I was invested in their success, so they were invested in my success. And I think that translates to, this was just a one-time thing, but teams that work together all the time, we're invested in each other. We want each other to do well.
That's so right. In the fundraising space, you have this caricature of fundraisers who are out there that never want to bring along a buddy or a leader in the organization. They want to, close the deal themselves as if donors were deals to be closed. We can talk about that another time. When there is community on a team, a fundraiser will say, hey, I need an assist over here. I need somebody from programs. I need the CFO. I need the CEO. And they don't feel any judgment about that, because they know that's how you work together, and that's the beauty of having a healthy community inside of your team culture, and everybody wins. Everybody feels part of it, and you break down that fundraising, everybody else divide that exists in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, that's the old scarcity. That's another issue with our sector, is the belief of scarcity. Like, there's only so much money or so many donors, and so we want to, like, shut people out because, oh, I don't want, so that I think that occurs among institutions, but also inside institutions as well. Yeah.
It always does.
All right. What's your third C?
Third C, let's talk about consistency. Okay.
Woo, yeah.
Clarity shows us, what we need to be doing. Community shows us that we're going to do it together. And consistency is the promise that it will be done at the agreed upon time, in the agreed upon way, over and over and over again. Organizations, nonprofits, they lead through fits and starts. You can't judge the success of something or a team in 2 weeks or even 60 days. You need the consistency of working your system over and over and over again. Consistency is the promise that when somebody succeeds and hits a goal or gets a big win, that everybody's going to celebrate them. And it's going to be the same for the person who's been there for 10 years and the person who's been there for 10 months. We had a tradition on one of the teams that I led that when somebody got a big win, we would ring a gong for them. It's the cheesiest, tackiest, but most fun thing ever. Somebody would get assigned a video and they would ring the gong. And it wasn't just the major gift officer that would get the celebration for the big gift. If the mid-level officer got a gift that was big for them in their area, they would be celebrated. It's the promise that everybody gets treated the same way when there's a celebration. It's also the promise that everybody will be treated the same way if you're not doing well. That the person who's been there forever, if they start, their numbers start going down, they're not performing as great, and the person who's been there for 10 months, that they're going to be handled and treated the same way, regardless of the depth of the personal relationships. So it doesn't matter if you're the longest serving or the highest dollar raising team member. Processes are the same for everybody. That consistency builds so much trust, and that consistency builds culture inside of teams that you can then stand on in good times and in difficult times.
Yeah, because it's trust, consistency. When I say what I say, when I do what I say I'm going to do over and over and over again, that creates trust, right? And
That's
then I
great.
can relax you know, because I know that there's consistency in the behavior, and I know that I can depend on you. If it's inconsistent, you can't depend on somebody. That's tough. Like even in our relation, because I think everything is personal, right? There's no like, oh, this is what we do at work and this is what we do at home. It's how you show up at home as well, right? Like like you're consistent in how you treat people, that's how you build trust. And I love that, because I too often do see organizations that they are just not consistent, and it does cause a lot of tension.
Yeah, a staff member pointed this out to me 15, 16 years ago. I had gotten promoted up to a senior level, and I backfilled the role that I was in the Northeast. And this person pulled me aside, gosh, about a year after that promotion and said, you treat your replacement different than the rest of us, right? Because those constituents, those communities, because you worked it for so long that you're making excuses for that person. And you're not consistent with how you treat them versus how you treat the rest of us, because you know the nitty-gritty details of everything. And what's that's doing, James, is that's causing the rest of us to not try as hard because we don't think we're going to get treated the same way. And that was like a gut punch to me, Marianne, that
Mm,
somebody had to come and say that. And at first, I probably reacted a bit negatively, at least inside. I think I kept my composure on the outside. But reflecting on that over a few days, he was right.
yeah.
I wasn't consistent in how I treated somebody because my own come from gave me a lot more knowledge about my replacement's job than everybody else's job. And I kind of made excuses for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that that person came to you. Like what a beautiful opportunity that they brought you, and I'm just sending them a little love for having the courage to come say, hey, this is because that's what I coach people on, how to do that. Like, hey, this is wrong, and yeah, it hurts at first, and then you're like, but wait, once you process the pain, and you can look at it from your not from your instinct, or from the base level bodily response, but from your intellect and your intuition, that you could see, hey, there's a lesson in here, right? And I'm not practicing like this consistency of treating everybody the same. Yeah, I like it. I want to
We
ask
all
you,
have we all have stuff to learn as leaders, and if we don't let our teams speak into us, we never learn.
yeah, feedback's a beautiful thing, and that's because a lot of the times we don't receive that feedback because and this is what I work with people on. It instigates feelings of guilt or shame, and we will do anything we can not to feel those things. And so, the more that we can receive, like what we call blind spots, so things that people can see about you but you can't see about yourself. Like that. Yeah, okay, it can sting in the moment, but it doesn't like live inside me. I know how to process those things, and then people can have a lot more honest and productive conversations, that's one of the things that I help people do. Okay, I want to share a story with you a little bit, because one of the teams that I worked with for a long time, and I use them as a case study quite frequently, is the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. When I started, we had mission advancement and we had communications, and they kind of worked side by side. and supportive of each other, yet there was something that wasn't quite clicking, you know? And what I realized, I just remember in the moment I'm standing in front of them and I had this whole agenda to do this planning session. And I just threw it out the window because the divine download came in. It was like, they don't understand they're part of the same system. Right. So if like the process of enrolling donors, communications is like at more of the top of it, and donor, the mission advancement, like they're at the bottom, but we're all walking the same path here. So, like, because communication is just sending out communications, right? And it's like they're not really metric, tracking it. This was a long time ago. Things are much different. And then, mission advancement, like, wait, you guys can actually support each other. Wow. And you're all part, like, oh, and I laid it out to them like on like rungs on a ladder, because um awareness, interest, connection, action. Like, look at this, like, and a boom, and they just exploded, and you could see, oh, now it makes sense. I just recalibrated. What I'm saying is recalibrated their like intention, like their what was your first C? I just blanked on the word. Clarity. I gave them clarity. I couldn't, oh my God, I couldn't think of clarity. Huh. So, but I gave them clarity of their role, and they were like, oh, and it all kind of dropped into place, and they understood how they were connected to each other, and what each other's role was, and with that formula. And I just remember, like, wow, this is incredible, because they just didn't see how they were connected. And I do see a lot of times, like, just organizations working in silos. Right now, if you got 10, 15 people, and like you've got programs here and fundraising here, and not realizing how we're all part of the same system.
You have to create that synergy inside an organization. When you look at, you're talking fundraising and communications, let's talk fundraising and marketing. Okay. The goal there is exactly the same. Your goal is to build an audience, communicate with that audience, and exchange something of value with that audience. You want to exchange great content, great relationships, an opportunity to change the world for dollars, from those givers. That is the same goal for marketing and for fundraising. In the for-profit world, more and more you're seeing a role of chief revenue officer. And underneath of that, you have all the marketing, all the communications, all the sales, all the partnerships, everything external to the organization. And I see nonprofits that are really succeeding and growing doing the same thing, because all those teams have the same goal, but they have different specialties inside of that goal.
Right.
And that's where clarity is really important. If you're crafting communications, okay, and your goal is to help draw givers closer to the organization, but you don't know the underlying motivations of the giving community that you have, how are you going to, agitate their problem and then solve that problem in your communication, in your appeals, in your emails, in your newsletter? Vice versa. If you're a person on the fundraising team and you don't know how to tell a story, and you haven't been trained on how to tell your organization's brand story, how are you going to draw people in? I think that every marketing person and communication person should visit 10 donors every year. And I think every fundraiser should sit through 10 hours of story training practice a quarter to do their job really well. Everybody, these are the same goals, and clarity brings that. Community is doing that work together, and consistency is doing it over time to get better at it. Because what I see happening so often is the fundraisers to the marketing team's face will say, that was a really nice piece. And then they'll all leave and go down the hallway and say, oh my gosh, these marketing people are so stupid. I can't believe they do this. Do they not get it? I don't understand them. The marketing people will say, oh, fundraisers, you're doing such a great job. I can't believe you're out there doing all this great work and hustling and having these donor meetings. Oh, that's so scary. I could never do that. And then behind closed doors, oh my gosh, the money isn't coming in. These people must be so stupid. You see that all the time in organizations. And I tell teams, you are actually lying to each other's face in order to preserve a piece that actually does not exist.
That is exactly
lying.
right.
You are lying to each other. Okay. The only kindness that you can bring is having, people call it radical candor now, conversations that are candid, where you say, actually, this isn't working for all of us. You missed the ball there. You dropped something over here. That's the only way to get better together. We think that lying to each other is actually kind when it's so harmful to ourselves and our teams. And the harder thing is to tell the truth in a way that somebody can receive so we all can get better together.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the things, and this is the lesson that I learned as well, is, we tend to sacrifice peace over conflict. Conflict bad, peace good, right? And what happens um is that the more we put peace on a pedestal and sacrifice conflict, it will eventually become crashing down. So by being nice and kind and lying, right? And I know that's not our intention. Our intention is to keep ourselves emotionally safe and comfortable. So we lie to do it, is that actually we're actually creating more conflict. By avoiding conflict, we're creating more of it because it will eventually explode, right? And because it'll build and build and build, and like, that pedestal will come crashing down, and it's conflict. So by allowing for the balance of peace and conflict, like, this is what I tell myself a lot too, if I can create a little conflict, I'm actually creating peace, right? Like, so by saying the giving, saying, speaking the truth to a situation as you see it, right? That may make somebody uncomfortable, but in that little bit of conflict, I'm actually creating peace. I'm maintaining the balance, because you see, like, I know that's kind of mind blowing, but the more that we avoid it, the more control we need, the more peace we need, the more opportunities we have for chaos and conflict. So by just creating, hey, there's a little chaos, okay, there's a little conflict, that's actually creating peace and creating stability. And once I had to learn to reframe my relationship with conflict in order to be able to, like, coach people properly. And I'm like, because you and I are often the truth tellers. Right? Like sometimes we get brought into to help people understand a problem or an issue that's happening, and help them, build the skills they need to resolve it. And so I had to reframe that, and understand, oh, by doing this, I am actually creating peace. And I love what you say about the kindness. Like, we're wanting to be kind to each other, but that is not that is not serving people to do that. Yeah.
and you know what you did right there, Marianne, when you reframed that and you brought that little bit of conflict in, you actually showed vulnerability. And
Hmm.
I think that's what leaders need to do more of, because bringing that conflict does put you in a vulnerable spot. You're the one that broke the false piece that was there. And when I've gone into broken teams, whether as a consultant or an in-house leader, the only way I've found to do this effectively is for the leader to be the one that expresses that vulnerability at the outset.
Yep.
Hey, I messed up here. I need your help to help get better. It's one way to do it. Or, hey, I know that as a community, we're not going to like this, but we have to talk about this hard thing, and people get sweaty and anxious, when you do it. But the leader needs to model that you can be safe and vulnerable at the same time. And that helps us all get stronger together.
The most vulnerable person in the room is the most powerful person in the room. And I think people are kind of starting to realize that a little bit, that showing that, even like when your story of somebody coming to you and giving you some feedback, like, they put themselves in a very vulnerable position, right? But of sharing that feedback, and it gave you such an opportunity for growth. And I just think I think a lot people will leave organizations, they will quit, they will move to, like, you know what I mean, to not have a difficult conversation. They'll rearrange their lives not to experience this. So if we can up our emotional temperature, right, of what we can tolerate, you can get a lot done, and build true trust, right? Not the fake trust.
I had a client last year and they brought me in August or September. Their revenue was down 50% from the year before, and they did not know if they were going to make it to the end of the year. Thankfully, they made it. When you dug into the organization and tried to figure out what was happening, There was one thing that was clear. Their CEO was not able to have difficult conversations with people. He wasn't able to look somebody in the eye and say, hey, this was your goal in fundraising, or hey, this was your responsibility in finance, and say, you didn't do it. I need you to come up with a plan to correct this. That organization is still struggling because that CEO still can't do it. Now their fundraising has gotten better because I think they hired a great, consultant to come in and help them. But the rest of the organization is struggling. Those conversations, as humans, we really struggle with them. But when we break through that fear and that shame and that guilt and that discomfort, I think you're 100% right, Marianne. That's when you truly find power. And I'm not talking about bullying power. I'm talking about power that can transform organizations and teams and communities because it's almost a servant oriented power. Hey, I'm
Yes.
going to become uncomfortable for the sake of the team so we can all get better. I can take the hit so that you can enjoy peace in the organization.
I love this. And I'm so excited because I love everything you're saying because it's everything that I'm working on. And I think it's so much of what our industry needs. You know, there's always going to be a strategy, there's always going to be a toolkit, there's always going to be, but learning how to be a more conscious leader will take you so much farther than any of that. And I use the word sovereignty. So I'm sovereign in my field of existence. So your feedback doesn't have to define who I am, right? I get to do that. And that in a way, it's like, oh, go away. It's like, okay, I get to look at that's just it's information. And it's all about that. For me, it's about helping people claim their sovereignty of over situations and helping them just understand, hey, it's a feeling, it'll pass. It's a biological response. We all have them. Thank God your body functions. Yay. Because if you didn't have that discomfort, your body probably wouldn't be functioning. But you can really reset your emotional temperature. It takes practice. And if you're that CEO would commit, to something like but you can do it. You can learn it. It does take a little practice. All right, we probably need to wrap this up. So what would you say to your, that CEO, that executive director of the small to mid-sized nonprofit? Like what would be your most sagest advice for them in team building?
Oh my goodness. My sagest advice: don't wait.
Yeah.
You are not going to have a perfect plan. There is not going to be a linear A to B, B to C strategy for this. You need to throw yourself into the fray. You need to take imperfect action, and you need to start building a better team today. If that's in relation to fundraising, I think you need to jump on it lickety split because I think there are some really hard years ahead for the fundraising community, particularly when you think about public funding declining, I think pretty precipitously here into the future. You need to fix teams that are broken because your revenue streams are not going to start going up and to the right until you get rid of your poor performers, bring clarity to the team, bring consistency, bring community. Whether this is the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, you need to jump on that literally this week to see growth and better outcomes for yourself this year.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. I like the imperfect action. Just start. You don't need a plan. You don't need to Rubik's Cube it. Just start. Just do something, right? And just jumping in because yes, that the imperfect action. Just try it. All right. Now I always end with the last question, which is now you're in Maryland. I'm in St. Louis, but I know if you're ever off the farm and we wind up at a karaoke bar together, what's your go-to song?
Oh, goodness. Turn around, bright eyes. I don't know, 80s power ballads just do it
Yeah.
for through and through, time and time again.
And you know what? Everybody will sing along to that as well. That's what those power ballads, because they come sing-alongs anyway, right? So you can just lead the crowd.
Well, what's yours, Marianne?
Well, that's a great and deep question. It just depends, but I doing a lot of new stuff. I do a lot, like I Dua Lipa, that's a big one. I'm doing some Dua Lipa, Fergie, MILF Money, but then I have some 80s like Pat Benatar, or I do like All That Jazz. That's a big one. Like if I had
Okay.
one number I could only sing for the rest of my life, I would just do that one.
All That Jazz from
Yeah,
Chicago. Okay.
yeah. The Catherine Zeta-Jones version, because like for
Okay.
some reason her voice and mine, I can do that. All right,
If
well,
I could make my entire life a musical and sing and dance my way through it,
me too.
it would be the best life ever.
I feel like I'm kind of doing that, honestly. That's why I love karaoke so much, because it's my favorite form of like creative self-expression. It's full body, right? And it's vulnerability. It's trying something. It's maybe screwing up. It's, all of the things that I practice with people that, karaoke is. And I know it may sound, I'm not even gonna say that. There's no qualifier there. It's just, you practice those things in those like environments. You're like, why am I so scared to get this wrong? And like, you can like, oh, how can I,
What's the worst that can happen?
right. Thank you so much, James. How can people get in touch with you? And if they're interested in talking more about what you
Yeah.
do.
Two different ways. One, our website, thekiposgroup.org, the Kipos, Kipos group.org. And the second is LinkedIn. That's where I hang out. That's my social media platform, and I'm on there every day.
Yeah, and that's where we met, right? Didn't we meet on
That's
LinkedIn?
right.
Yeah. See, there you go. LinkedIn is so good now. I think really for nonprofits, it's just the place to be. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm at that if I have, like my social media efforts are really focused in on LinkedIn as well. So thank you so much for being here. I love this conversation. I love when I meet somebody and we don't really know each other and we have so much alignment. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the nonprofit space, because it's needed. Because we all just want to do better and make our communities better. And thank you for supporting people who do that.
No problem. It is a joy. And thanks for having me today, Marianne.
All right. And that is it for this episode of The Influential Nonprofit. And we will see you next week for more talk about growing your influence in your donor base.